Hello everybody. This video is going to give you some ideas about this, what to do for this module and kind of some of my reasoning behind it. The module is named Non-Experimental Part 2 because it builds on the analysis you did with Steger and Kane in Part 1. And of course Steger and Kane is quantitative research, but it's not experimental, and that's often called non-experimental research or non-experimental quantitative. But really, a better name for this module would be Stepping into the Researcher's Shoes. So what I'm going to ask you to do in this module is think like your Steger and Kane and make a plan, kind of a work plan of how much work you have to do, how long it's going to take, and what are all the different things you have to do. Now I'm going to show you this template. But my main reason for making this video is to explain some of my reasoning so you kind of get how to do this based on what the purpose is. Alright, so first of all, this template is an Excel spreadsheet that I stole from one of my students last semester, and I just deleted all his work and left the kind of skeleton for you to use. So what you would do here is think about different things that you'd have to do in order to get the various parts of the proposal done right. And I think the best one for me to show you to get how this works is the IRB proposal. So let's say one of the IRB proposal tasks is writing consent letters, so you would put that down. Maybe it's going to take you an hour to write a consent letter. And the IRB proposal itself, maybe it's going to take you 3 or 4 hours to write an IRB proposal. They're not that hard once you've done one. And so task, work hour times, you might put over here 1 hour to write the confidentiality agreement, or the consent agreement, excuse me, and 4 hours to write the actual IRB proposal. But this column here, estimated duration and time in days from start to finish. One other task of the IRB proposal is submitting the proposal and getting it approved, and that has to come before you can obviously do any of your data collection. So getting the submitting and getting approval, that might take 0 time in terms of the task, or 10 minutes to submit it. But it might take 6 weeks or 8 weeks to get approved. And so that's going to be an important thing for you to think about it when you're planning research, because sure, the IRB proposal itself might only be 4 hours of work, but it really represents 8 weeks of time span that you got to think about in advance before you do your research, because otherwise, you might think, well, I'm going to need to collect my data in September, so then you have to backtrack at least 2 months in submitting your IRB proposal. So that's the idea here, is that you think through as concretely as possible, as if you're really doing the research yourself, what has to be done, how long it's going to take, and how it works sequentially in terms of time. Right? You do not have to use this template. You can make up something yourself. You could use Word, you could use tables, but it has to have these 2 basic ideas of how much time it takes you and how much time it takes start to finish to get it done. Alright, now notice that this table that I borrowed from a student has the phrase PAR project at the top, and my directions in this module are for you to use Steger and Kane. So I'm going to first of all change my directions. It says Steger and Kane is a good choice, but if you want to do the same analysis with your PAR project instead, that's going to be okay. And for some of you that are really serious about your PAR project, this is going to be a really useful exercise for you to start to think through how complicated it is. Also, for my purposes, it will be useful for some of you to do Steger and Kane and some of you to do your own projects as the basis for this spreadsheet. Because if I go back a semester, the first time I taught this class, this project here, Stepping into the Researcher's Shoes, I did it more in depth, and I actually did it twice, and it was the major project of the course. And I really did like it as a project, but this semester I decided to do a little bit more with the you doing the interviews and analyzing the interviews than I was able to do next semester, so that's a trade-off. But the way it worked out last semester, and I hope we at least get a little piece of that this semester, is the first time students did this, they did it with their PAR project. The second time they did it with something like Steger and Kane. And then the discussion we were able to have was what's easier to do, a PAR proposal or a causal comparative study? And I think for many of the students in the class, it was pretty eye-opening because the POWER proposal, as you know, contains several cycles of data collection, includes qualitative data collection, which you're starting to learn through your interviews and transcribing, can be very time-consuming. And so POWER research is actually quite complex in terms of the work that's involved, even though it's somewhat simpler from a methodological standpoint. Whereas when people analyze studies like Stager and Kane, even though I think you already know it's a complex study, it has a lot of steps to it. The big step is get access to the data from the district. And once you have that, it's a lot of number crunching and analysis. But the whole data collection process in a causal comparative study, or especially an ex post facto study where you're just getting data that already exists, can be quite simple compared to a POWER project. So kind of have two goals. One is for you to think through a real research proposal, like you're the researcher, able to plan it out and think about how hard it is. And the second goal is to be able to think through, well, this methodology versus that methodology and how hard is it going to be. Going back to something Dr. Brooks, I know, preached in the first semester was narrow your focus, and that's so it can be manageable. The other part of making something manageable is really thinking through the methodology that you've proposed or are thinking of proposing and thinking through, is it realistic? Can I get it done myself in a reasonable amount of time that I think is what I am able to devote to this? And if not, what would I need to do, or what are my possible choices to simplify it a bit while maintaining credibility? So anyways, a whole exercise in thinking through what it's like to plan research. The more you can visualize your research ahead of time, the more likely you're going to be in being successful with it. It's not unlike a teacher planning a lesson. The clearer you can visualize that lesson happening before it actually happens, including what might go wrong and how long things are going to take and what your options are, the much better off you're going to be when you actually teach the lesson. All right, looking forward to your posts in this module. See you online.